Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're joining from today. This is our weekly Transformation Ground Control live stream. This is a weekly live stream where we cover all things related to digital transformation. So thank you all for being here today. My name is Eric Kimberling. I'm the CEO of Third Stage Consulting. We're an independent consulting firm that helps clients throughout the world reach the third stage of digital transformation success. And today's topic is the future of artificial intelligence in ERP systems. So we're going to sort of talk about that intersection between an older legacy established technology like ERP software, and we're going to talk about how that intersects and aligns potentially with artificial intelligence and some emerging technology within the artificial intelligence space. I'll introduce our guest here in just one moment. But before I do, a couple logistical things. First of all, as I mentioned, this is a weekly live stream we host every Tuesday at the same time on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. This live stream becomes part of our edited full version of the Transformation Ground Control podcast, which gets released a week from tomorrow. So the episode that is released a week from tomorrow will feature this interview. So thank you for being part of the live production of that podcast. And you can find new episodes of that podcast every Wednesday, streaming to LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, as well as on audio podcast platforms like Google, Amazon, and Apple Podcasts, for example, among others. So be sure to check out Transformation Ground Control, which is the podcast that this interview is part of. Secondly, we have a global audience that typically joins us on these Tuesday discussions. So I encourage, or I look forward to engaging with all of you and taking your questions throughout the conversation here today. So please drop in the chat any questions you have along the way. We're going to get to those audience questions as we go here. And speaking of questions or speaking of chat, if you don't mind dropping in the chat right now, where in the world you're joining from, what city and country are you in? I'd love to see in the chat here where you're joining from, just to get a feel for where the global community is joining us from here today. So that all being said, as I mentioned before, our topic today is the future of AI in ERP software. And today's guest is Sagiv Greenspan, who is the CEO of Priority Software. It's funny because I was saying right before the show, I don't want to mispronounce your name. I was more worried about his first name, not your last name. I was not worried about mispronouncing Greenspan, but somehow I still mispronounced your name. I mispronounced the easy part. So, Sagiv, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
You're joining us all the way from Tel Aviv, Israel. Or at least to me, it's all the way from Tel Aviv, Israel. To some, you're just right in their backyard. But thank you for joining late in the day here, your time in Israel.
Sure. Yeah, I'm indeed from Israel.
Good deal. Well, you're the CEO of Priority Software, which I did mention, but maybe tell us a little bit about your background. Maybe we'll start off, let's talk about Priority Software in just a moment, but first maybe talk about your background and upbringing. How'd you grow up in this space? Tell us a little bit about you.
Okay, thank you. I'm originally from Israel. I've been in the enterprise software industry for almost 30 years in multiple industries, in telecom, in fintech, and in others. I lived outside of Israel for a good portion of my career, 2 years in Belgium, and then 14 years in different parts in the US, in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Illinois. I actually started my journey as a technologist. I learned math and computer science. I started as a developer, team leader, development manager. But in the last 20 years or so, I'm in this triangle of technology, business, customers, managed organizations, anywhere from few people all the way to more than 2,000 people. And in the last a little bit more of 2 years, I'm in this ERP space, but enterprise software is what I do for a living for a long time.
Great. So you've been in the space for quite some time. About this, I think you and I have probably started around the same time, or certainly have been doing this for a long time as well. Tell us a little bit about Priority Software. I always semi-joke with people that Priority is one of those software companies that's well-established, has a good client base, but it's a name that a lot of people haven't heard of. So tell us a little bit about Priority Software and what you guys do.
Okay, so we are basically a portfolio of business application platforms. So we are helping customers go through their digital journey We have ERP in multiple verticals. We are very well established in manufacturing, technology companies, construction companies, pharmaceutical companies. I would say that in Israel, we are probably, I'll say in modesty, we are the most dominant ERP player. We are in business for more than 30 years. And in general, and we are installed today in 40 countries. We have system integrators in all of them, anywhere from Colombia in South America, definitely US, Europe, all the way to Australia and New Zealand. We have roughly 15,000 customers. And we are specializing besides the ERP. We have also three other verticals that we're specializing in. One is retail. In retail, we provide end-to-end retail management system as a unified commerce into the ERP. So anywhere from the POS and mobile POS and self-service kiosk and the back end of e-commerce website as an omni-channel throughout the whole retail management, which is pricing, promotions, replenishment, if it's fashion, managed collections, etc., in a unified system into the ERP. So that's the retail. The other one is hospitality. So we have what is called PMS. I know it's maybe a problematic acronym, but it's property management system, which is managing the hotel itself, check-in, check-out, the gateway into ordering websites such as booking.com, Expedia, etc. Also connected into the ERP. And the last one is education. And we do school management system, and we have about 60% of the market share in Israel. So in general, ERP, retail, hospitality, education, this is kind of what we do in general. Maybe, two more sentences about our strategy. Our strategy is what we call as a service, as a platform, and as a portfolio. As a service is obviously our SaaS strategy. The platform is what we consider to be the essence of our system, which is the flexibility, the openness, strong UX UI, cloud and functionality. And the platform is also how we allow our customers to basically adjust the system to their needs.
Right.
So
Okay.
that's in general. In general, we believe in providing strong engines and tools and not just a bunch of features. So that's how we look at it.
So 30 years in the space, as a software provider, and in a lot of different diversified industry verticals that you're playing in right now, or that you're focused on. So I imagine this topic is something that you're seeing a wide spectrum of application or use cases as it relates to artificial intelligence. So I'm really looking forward to chatting about sort of where we are today and where we're headed in the future with the future of AI within ERP systems. And before I get to some of the questions I have, and thank you for that background and introduction, Sagiv, just to look to the audience here and where everyone's joining from today. We've got a good turnout here today from all over the place, everywhere from Ridgewood, New Jersey in the United States, Quebec, Canada, Dallas, Texas in the U.S., Morocco, Belgium, Dubai, San Diego, California, India, Wycombe, England, New Jersey, India, North Carolina, Singapore, Israel, Denver, Colorado. A lot of good representation from really all over the world. So I appreciate everyone joining from wherever you're joining from today. Thank you for being here and for dropping that in the chat. And again, any questions you have as it relates to AI in the world of ERP software, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We're going to get to some of your questions, and I already see some questions coming in that I know we'll get to here in just a moment. But I guess just to start, then maybe just to set the context for this whole topic of AI within ERP software, Sagiv, how is AI in general? How is AI changing ERP systems? You and I have been doing this for decades. We've seen the evolutions of ERP systems over the years. How is AI different? How is it changing the world of ERP software?
So I think that the AI is getting into changes that the ERP is going through, and together with the changes of the ERP, the users are also are changing with it. Today we are looking, if traditionally we used to look at users are the traditional desktop people, finance people, logistics people that are sitting in front of the desktop. So today we are looking at traditional users, and we are looking at new sets of users, and I'll touch
Mm,
it in a minute. I think that in general, when we talk about the traditional users, they do have today new expectations. And the new expectations is that they want to shy away, or they think they can shy away from Sisyphean backend work to do things that are more considered, I'll call them front end innovation.
mm,
So if I need to look at how is AI changing them, I would probably characterize them into maybe four different groups. How it affects them: the effectiveness, how does it affect their experience, what can it provide them in terms of prediction, and how it can even help things like sustainability. And maybe I'll say a few words about each one. So when we talk
sure.
about effectiveness, we usually think about things like repetitive tasks that can be done today automatically.
Mm,
Um, so things like things that are happening again and again in ERP, it's very common that you have things that you need to do over and over again. This can be solved by AI, and not just by recording things, but by doing automatic corrections for stuff that the system can learn how to correct things that are Sisyphean, and do them more effectively. Things like sophisticated reasoning or conclusions can be done by by AI, such as optimizing all kinds of processes, suggesting next best offer or next best actions, and things like that. So this is definitely things that can help the effectiveness of each user. And when you look at it in a wider way, how can you move people from doing this work into things that human needs to do, and not and whatever can be replaced by the ERP will be replaced by the ERP.
right.
When you look at experience, then how can AI help with the personalization? And personalization can be today, and we do it already, based on user behavior, and to improve. So, for instance, we in priority, each user, the system learns how he behaves how he behaves with his desktop ERP, and then after a couple of weeks, the system will pop up and say, I've seen that there are fields that you're using and fields that you're not using, or in a certain order. Would you mind if we reorder your screen based on your behavior? And it will reorganize the complete UI of the ERP. So this is helping with personalization, helping with his experience. When we talk about prediction, how can the system help predict specific, business needs, such as prediction of churn of customers based on things that are happening behind the screen, that it's sometimes very difficult to see when you're not looking at a wide range of data like the system can do, and humans need to spend a lot of time and effort in order to do it. And the last example, when I mentioned sustainability, how can the system optimize different things in order to improve sustainability? For instance, let's say that there is a company that has trucks. How can you optimize their routes in order to create more effectiveness and less, gas pollutions, etc.? How do you how do you improve how do you optimize your inventory in order not to order stuff that you don't need? Stuff like this. These are all things that are helping business, but can also help, sustainability for that matter.
Right. And that's such a you touched on some trends that are so important to the industry right now, or that are important to a lot of organizations in terms of sustainability and the way that we use technology and the value we get out of it. And it's just interesting to hear you describe the way that AI is changing ERP systems, in terms of not only the types of users that are using the system, but also how they're using the system and how they're interfacing with it. And it seems like AI is really a way for us to finally start to get more of that value that's always been the potential of ERP software, but we've always sort of fallen short of that ability to really maximize value and get usage out of this robust technology that's really always been there. But now AI allows us to capitalize on it and exploit the technology in a different way than we haven't been able to in the past.
Yeah, you always need to think about technology as a whole, but definitely AI. How can you make it practical? How can you bring real value? And that's always something that when we come across a new technology, it's not just about an engineering adventure. Is how do you really make practical use out of it? How do you improve the life of your users? And definitely when you go to a new type of user, such as the company suppliers, the company customers, etc., drivers, warehouse workers, how do you optimize the work? At the end of the day, it helps the company be more effective, but it also helps the life of each and every user to be more effective and more efficient in what he does.
Right, right, and it allows you to interact with technology in an easier way, because you think about the really old ERP technology back when you had the transaction codes. You didn't even have, this is before user interface and the easy menu driven options, or the easier menu driven options. Now you've got AI as a new way that's sort of like a predecessor to the GUI or sort of the menu driven approach to ERP. Now you can interact with the ERP system in a way that's more user friendly, it seems.
Yeah, it's more user friendly for sure. And yeah, it's really an evolution from something that was really hard coded into things that were more, let's call it, rule based driven, into AI, which is basically a system that is learning and know how to continuously improve the life of the users, rather than having somebody type in, or have developers have to improve it all the time. The system really knows how to each time make it a little more efficient, based on the user behavior and based on what he needs, based on data that flow into the system. So these are all things that are injected into the backend, and the backend knows how to make a better use of them and improve it all the time, not just once a year or once every 2 years, but all the time there are slight improvement based on the AI models.
Right, right. That's interesting. Now you gave a few operational examples of how AI can help make someone's job more efficient operationally, but Peter on LinkedIn has a question that's interesting, which is, do you think AI is going to help automate financial management as well? Do you see examples of AI, or do you see emerging trends where AI might be able to help in financial management as well as some of your core operations, like the truck routing example that you gave?
Yes, absolutely. I think that in many areas they also affect financial management, and they can go into things like how do you better plan your resources. And resources can be headcount, resources can be things that you purchasing, stuff like this. How do you do it based on on types like seasonality, or things that are happening that have all kinds of reasoning that you don't always see, that will help you plan better, and then if we take the purchasing, how do you purchase better? How do you replenish your inventory in a more effective way? All of these are affecting, the financial management of, of your company, of your business.
Right.
So there are many aspects on, as we said, things like truck, things like optimizing inventory, optimizing route of trucks. These are all things that help you better plan and better execution, that are of course translated into better financial management.
Right. Yeah, great point. And then Larissa actually has a question. Larissa from LinkedIn has a question about Priority software in general. But what platform is Priority written on? And I know you've got multiple solutions, so you might have multiple answers here. But what platform is it written on, and who hosts Priority?
So Priority is a SaaS platform. So we are running mostly on AWS. We do have some on-prem from older generation, but all of our newer are run on AWS. By the way, when I do talk about SaaS, it's not just about where is it hosted. It's about the end-to-end services that we provide, from monitoring, security, upgrades, etc. So the end-to-end SaaS, that's what we're running. Most of it is written in Java and .NET mostly. So
Okay. So it sort of leads to another question that I had for you. In terms of not just Priority software and where it is hosted, but if we look at cloud solutions in general, including Priority, you just mentioned that you're a SaaS provider. You have a hosted cloud solution that customers can leverage. How does cloud software in general, how does that enable, or does it enable artificial intelligence? In other words, these are two parallel concepts here. You have AI that's emerging. Cloud is becoming more established, and obviously that's more the mainstream direction that a lot of software vendors are going right now. But are the two related? Does cloud enable AI, and if so, how?
So in general, maybe one word about cloud, and then we'll talk about how does cloud interact with the AI and what is the connection between them. So cloud in general enabled things that was harder to implement on on-prem systems. Things like monitoring that I mentioned, things like automatic scalability. This is critical because if you remember, in the old days when you needed to scale, you needed to order hardware. Usually it took 6 months until it came, and another 2 months until it was installed, and then you needed to plan way in advance. And if you had a season that is stronger than others, then you were usually stuck. Today, in a click of a button, you can scale your system, you can double your hardware, you can triple your hardware as quickly and as much as you need. Security definitely made it more available. And probably as important is the ability to connect to external system to complement your solutions, whether it's other software that are complementing your ERP, all the way to connectivity to things like sensors that you can in online read all kinds of sensors and connect to them, and enhance the data that help you in order to make business decision in a much easier way. So if I connect these topics into the AI, basically as much data as you have, the richer your AI models can get. So if we gave the example of sensors, then the sensors that you connect to whether it's weather sensors or meters that you are connecting and getting data, or machines that you are collecting in real-time data in order to enhance the data, then your AI models can do it. So let's even take the example that we gave about uh, optimizing routes of trucks. Then if you're connected to things like weather, to traffic, stuff like this, then you can do it in real time. If you're optimizing things like machinery or production lines, etc., you can optimize it. Your AI models can take into account real-time data and then do some recalculations and do everything in real time. So basically, cloud, the fact that it enhanced the connectivity into different types of data, allows also the AI to be more sophisticated and allow it to correct and learn in real time what's happening and provide better analysis.
Right. It sort of provides that the consolidation, the connectivity that you mentioned, the integration. It provides easier access to data that in the past may have been sort of buried in different parts of your organization or buried in different on-prem systems. And now you're sort of bringing that to the surface in a way that can be used to support AI.
Exactly.
Will from LinkedIn adds a comment here related to what you just said, Sagiv, which is moving to the cloud is the first logical step to unlock the potential of tools like AI and machine learning. So it's a great point.
Absolutely.
I have a two-part. There's actually two questions I'm going to try and combine into one here, just because they're very similar, but they're a little bit different. Let me see if I can find it here. Bear with me. I may have to come back to it. Okay, here's one that's it's vendor specific, but I'm going to sort of turn it into a broader question here. And I can comment on the vendor specific part of it leading into the broader question. But this is the question here is, this might have been covered already, which it has not. We have not covered this yet, but it has not been covered. But SAP versus Microsoft in terms of AI innovation aside from predictive analytics, surely Microsoft is way ahead of SAP in light of OpenAI and Copilot on the horizon. And I'll just comment there real quickly. I think that Microsoft is probably further ahead on more of the consumer-facing side of AI, but SAP has actually made good strides on more the, call it the true enterprise application side of things in terms of machine learning within some of the planning and forecasting tools and whatnot. They have a long ways to go, don't get me wrong, but I think Microsoft just has more mainstream visibility right now just because of the ChatGPT investment and their investment in OpenAI and Copilot and whatnot. So I think the key message here is to say that, my thought is that software vendors in general are moving pretty heavily towards AI and machine learning. I mean, I don't know of a software vendor that's not thinking about it or trying to figure out how to integrate technology within that. Sort of leads to another question,
So
which
maybe Eric, one comment about that. I think that goes into the area of what is sometimes called as conversational AI. So when you are talking about the broader type of users in ERP, whether these are your suppliers, your customers, etc., then conversational AI such as ChatGPT, etc., I think is helping a lot with that. So, for instance, one thing that we have done is we connect ChatGPT into our ERP, and then basically you can type all kinds of questions. The AIs know how to interpret the intent of the question and the context of the question, and then it knows how to translate it into API calls into the ERP. So let's take an example. You can ask, let's assume that you are a B2B organization that is selling equipment. You can ask the system through ChatGPT, how many orders above 500K did I sell, or this salesperson sold over the last 3 months? and then the system knows how to translate, send an API request to the system, send it back, and tells you this is the answer. So conversational AI is definitely something that is Microsoft has done a very nice job. But since ChatGPT is kind of an open to everyone, then we could connect priority into through ChatGPT into our system and provide this type of conversational AI mostly to customers of our customers. So provide it as a, let's call it a customer portal to the ERP. That's one of the things that we are launching these days.
Interesting. Yeah, that's super, and that's a great point of distinction. The conversational AI versus other types of AI. That's a great, really good point of clarification. It sort of leads to another question. I'm not going to show it on the screen just because it's a longer question. I don't think I can show the whole thing, but this is from Laik on LinkedIn, and Laik says, Eric, one point I'd like to bring up is that while AI is undoubtedly the new buzzword and certainly has its allure, I feel that the integration of such technology into ERP systems, especially the larger ones, still has a considerable distance to cover. The question that arises then is what strategies can be employed to expedite this transition within an organization? And you just gave an example that I'm wondering, is that part of an answer to this question here, as far as how we might use ChatGPT within existing or legacy ERP systems, or how can we, in the short term, allow AI to sort of catch up? How can we use AI in the way it can be used while the vendors catch up in embedding AI into their software suite?
So I think it's a very interesting point and question. I think that when you look at ERP, as I said, that the ERP is changing. ERP is no longer one monolithic system that is answering every need of the organization. Today, ERP can be what is usually called as composable ERP. ERP can be, I'll call it broken apart into multiple questions. There are sometimes multiple divisions that have different needs. Sometimes there are complementing systems into the ERP. For instance, like retail management system can sit on top of ERP of financial of SAP, or WMS can complement other ERP. So I think that even if you have an SAP or an Oracle or any other system on the back end, then there are sometimes different needs that you can complement different other components from other vendors and then enhance it with AI on those complementing components. So it doesn't mean that everything should come necessarily from one vendor. Everything should be one monolith. You can choose how to create, let's call it a best of breed, even if you have a legacy system that doesn't provide AI capabilities.
That's a great point. And Will on LinkedIn just had a comment as you were saying that, Sagiv, that I think is very relevant, which is there are many smaller companies with specialized offerings like Proton AI that can bolt onto your ERP to help with sales specifically in that case. But I think, where he's going and where I think you just alluded to with the whole best of breed concept, it seems like AI is really opening up more options. You don't have to have, in the past, a lot of larger organizations, for example, felt like they had to have SAP or they had to have Microsoft or Oracle, one of these really big vendors that can do all these different things. But now what you're seeing with AI is it's sort of leveling the playing field in some ways and allowing to get better value or more value out of either smaller, best of breed, or even older legacy ERP systems. Is that something you're seeing in the market as well?
Yes, absolutely. We do see companies that are taking parts and pieces, and maybe they will even leave the finance on one system, but many other solutions. We see it very strongly in the hospitality space. We see it very strongly on the retail management. We see it in different companies that have special needs, that they will start taking pieces like logistics, like things, they will take it to other system, to challengers, I'll call it, like us, that are more agile, that are providing more sophisticated pieces of the ERP. They will take them into other system, and then they will decide what to do with their legacy. But this might take few years until they replace their ERP or even leave it as is, but take different components and provide the holistic solution that they really need in order to run their business in the agility that they think they need.
Right.
So yeah, absolutely, we see there's a trend definitely in the last, let's call it 3 4 years. That's definitely a trend we're seeing all over.
Right. Right. Makes a lot of sense. And Rachel on LinkedIn had a question a few minutes ago that it's very specific, but I think it's an interesting one because it sort of shows how AI can be used in so many different ways. But Rachel's question is, what is the best first project that can be implemented into demand planning or forecasting using AI? I don't know. Do you have an answer for that, or do you have an example in mind of where you've seen or you think you could see AI be used with your customers or elsewhere for planning and forecasting?
So yes, we see a lot of needs like this being implemented with AI in the area of inventory planning, replenishment, whether it's retail or even manufacturing. So yes, purchasing, inventory planning. These are the areas that we see it happening more and more, and I would say that they are even becoming quite common. Of how do you take into considerations the speed of sales, the seasonality, things like this, and how do they affect your planning ahead, your inventory replenishment, purchasing, etc. This is, I think that's probably a good place to start thinking about it, because it also has quite an impact on your financials, on even on the storage that you need. So it has an immediate effect on your day to day, and that's why it became quite common to do it. So
Hmm.
that's an example.
What about data and security? Here's a question from Ryan on LinkedIn, and it's not going to let me show the whole thing, so I'm actually going to hide it and just read it. But Ryan says it seems like just about anyone that can make an AI product for their business is. My mind keeps going to, if we are looking to connect potentially hundreds or thousands of AI or machine learning systems, how are we making sure that that data and information that's getting passed from one AI system to another is clean and accurate when there's so many actors in the space, and how is it protected from a security perspective? So maybe just to back up a second, how does, when we look at data management, data cleanliness, data security, all the data piece of it, as well as the security, the cybersecurity piece of it, how do we potentially need to rethink our data management security strategies to accommodate this emergence of AI?
So data is indeed a sensitive topic, and it has even multiple dimensions of sensitivity. Things anywhere from privacy into what I usually call is data fencing. How do you make sure that one data from one customers will not link to others? And so this is something that we take very seriously, definitely in SaaS related systems. It's something that we must protect the data in the most sensitive way. There are many standards around it, things like ISO, um, 27001, 2, etc. Things like SOC 1, SOC 2, etc. So we have to adhere to the highest standards. Some of it is because some of our customers demand it. For instance, in Israel, there is a project called Nimbus that is government grade, with the very high standards that we need to comply. So it's a topic by itself, and maybe there we can spend a whole hour about how do we protect our data. I will say that in that the cloud, to some extent, made it more, sensitive. But on the other hand, we have much more control on how do we protect the data that we have in the system, rather than each company trying to protect their own on-premise systems. So we look at it holistically. We have, a whole security team. We have what is called SOC, which is 24/7 Security Operations Center, that are monitoring from a security standpoint uh, our data all the time, and they have the best tools there are in order to protect it. So
Mm.
that's one thing. When we talk about data, when we think about data in general, data is basically something that, for instance, we collect all the time, but then the question is, what do you do out of it? How do you provide the data into your AI, into your users, etc.? How do you make real use out of it? We used to think, when we talked about data, we always used to think about what is today called the descriptive. You get analytics, you do reports, you get the data, you get a bunch of pages, and you start reading, line by line. So this sometimes is still happening, but there are many more things that you can do today with data. Going back to things like like predictive analytics, like prescriptive analytics, etc., etc. When we're going back to the question that he asked about how do you synchronize between different types of AI. So when it's your own system, then we know how to synchronized between different AI models, and basically send between the engine just the data that each engine needs to know. When you're talking about different AI models on different systems, then it's getting more tricky. We do it as part of integrating with other systems, but I don't think there is a silver bullet to all of it. I think each one is a case by case. You need to really understand how the models are getting the data, what they're deriving out of it, how does the other one that will get the data, what it will do. It's more complex when these are different vendors and they might use different AI models.
Right. And then you have, yeah, obviously the data privacy laws that are being enacted in Europe and other parts of the world, that have to be taken into consideration as well.
GDPR and all those standards that are these are really important, and are being followed very carefully by all of our customers.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So here's a question from YouTube, from BC Systems on YouTube, and this person asked, "Are there any plans for speech-driven report generation using AI in Priority Software?" And I think this is a great question, because not only I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on maybe what Priority Software can and can't do right now, but what are your plans for the future, and do you see that changing as the product evolves?
So yeah, definitely, definitely, we are there. There is already practical implementation of speech driven. Mostly, we see it in the warehouse. Um, when you do have people that are working in the warehouse, that are they need their hands free, so they are doing all kinds of picking in the warehouse, and they need to so they don't have how to type, because they are walking around. Maybe they have their small device hang, but they do need to use their hands in order to collect merchandise from the warehouse. So we do see more things like pick by voice and stuff like this, and this is where we do see more of a speech driven AI. Bless you.
Thank you.
So this is where the first practical that we see. I think we see it less. As I said, the conversational AI is getting more practical solutions, But usually, when we see it more in the newer, generation that are younger than us, they type faster than they talk. So that's why we see more conversational AI by typing. We see more speech related AI when it comes to things that people needs hands free, and that's where we see it more. I believe we'll see it more in things like drivers, warehouse. This is where we see it more practical implications of AI. Did I answer this question?
You did for me. I'll be curious to hear what the audience thinks, but I think that's you're hitting on a number of, or you're hitting on the point that AI has really almost a limitless use of opportunity. I mean, there's so many different ways that it could be being used, and I think it can be overwhelming at times. If there's a dark side to this, it's that, I think back to the question that someone had on LinkedIn about how do we get started, and I'm going to come back to that question actually in a moment, because there's so much to think about. There's so much pie in the sky possibility, but then you sort of have to bring it back to reality of where we are today. How do we take those first incremental steps just to start to cherry pick some of those opportunities? What about on the development side? This is from Shimi on LinkedIn. Shimi says, can the AI be a tool for developers as well? The question is also because most of the information that exists in the development is in Hebrew. I'm not sure if he's talking about priorities, development, documentation, or just whatever code he's working on. So what are your thoughts on AI being used to develop the software and the solutions that we're talking about here today? Do you see that being more important over time?
It's an interesting question. I can say that there are there are a lot of developers that are using things like ChatGPT in order to look for different questions, etc. I think that from a developer's perspective, I think AI will probably help also in the near future in order to correct logic in development. So basically, AI will look over what you are developing and do all kinds of suggestions, corrections, things in order to help you develop faster. So things that used to be more let's call it rule based will become more AI and will help the effectiveness of the developers. To be honest, we don't see it happening these days. These are more things that we are thinking about, that I'm hearing in the industry. But I think this is to some extent lagging after the practical implication that we see in the, let's call it, in the business space rather than in the development. But I think it's an interesting question that worth thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And another related comment from YouTube is how to get started. Use AI to organize already existing business data into AI ready data. So I thought it was a funny but kind of a true comment that you can use AI to organize the data to help you get ready to use AI in a more robust way, which I hadn't thought of it in that perspective, but it's an interesting comment.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes when you start working with AI, you do need to reorganize your data in order for your models to know how to process this data in a way that will match your model. So when we talk about things like supply chain optimization or stuff like this, a suggestion for pricing. So you need to bring all this data into one place, feed it into your AI models. So that's definitely something, sometimes part of the initial investment that you need to do in order to work with AI.
Right. Now, what about other emerging technologies? I know we've been talking about ERP and AI, but there's other emerging technologies that are also intersecting with ERP software and artificial intelligence. Things like RPA, or robotic process automation, intelligent automation, just other emerging tools like that, for example, RPA and automation. How are those emerging technologies and other emerging technologies enabling better functionality within ERP software, either as it relates to AI or maybe even independently of AI?
So I think you mentioned automation. So I think automation is definitely an interesting topic, emerging rapidly. And when you think about automation, it also has many implications. Some of them are getting into the AI as well, um, but automations can go anything from let's take an example, um, create a shipping document based on every sales order that you get. So these are things that can happen automatically, and instead of people doing the same repetitive job again and again and again, the system can do it automatically. Automatic warehouse picking request based on sales order. So there are many things in the ERP space that people today are still doing manually when the system know how to do it. When you overlay AI on it, then you can make these things more sophisticated than just a rule, and um, then you can combine the AI into the automation and create a sophisticated automation, I'll call it. Things like email notification based on specific condition. So if it's not with AI, then the conditions are more, let's call it, pre-entered into the system. When it's AI, then you can get the email notification to be, I'll call it, smarter. Um, Things like calling external system, production request based on specific orders, or slow down production based on things like, let's say, weather related or other external conditions. But then you can even, it doesn't need to be inside the ERP. You can also create interfaces request into external system based on it. Even things like planning shifts of employees, and even sending them invitations, or provide them when do they need to come to work based on stuff that are happening in the system. These are all things that can be done automatically, and AI can make them more sophisticated. Let's say we these are things that we all have today. Automatic fill of values. So you have a lot of things to do. The automation and the potentially the AI can fill some of the. You have a form with, I don't know, 50 fields. You can fill in 3. The system can automatically autofill the rest. These are all things that automation can help, and as I said, the AI can make them more sophisticated. So these are all two emerging technologies. Can each one run separately, or you can combine them and create the sophistication.
Hmm. So it almost sounds like AI is a sort of a fuel, adding fuel to a fire of technology that was already there, but now you're adding some fuel to it, and really exponentially increasing the value you can get out of some of these technological investments.
Yes, exactly. Again, it all, you just need to make sure that you are providing a real value, whether the effectiveness or the experience or whatever objective you have that you want to achieve. But how do you make it to bring real value and not just for the fun of using AI?
Right.
It doesn't need
Well,
to be a gimmick.
right. Yeah, exactly. And I guess, just a sort of a question to bring this all together, to summarize everything we've talked about is you look at this emergence of AI and just the evolution of ERP software in general, and it can be overwhelming. It's sort of like you look at where you are today, and then you look at the possibilities of where technology could take you as an organization. And that gap, that chasm is pretty big. It can be overwhelming. So what advice would you have for organizations just to get started? How can we sort of bring this back to reality of where we are today to help us incrementally get to where, all these grand opportunities that we're talking about here today? What are some of the best ways to get started for an organization that isn't as far along in the journey as the technology?
You're talking about the journey of an ERP, or a journey of AI, or both,
Both.
just to make.
Yeah, both.
So I think that in general, when we think about a transformation or a journey of technology of ERP, then businesses are in general are changing. I would say in many cases they are changing rapidly. And I think that when you do think about an ERP, I think the wise thing, at least in my mind, is to think about not think about your needs today, but think about the future. And by the way, when you think about your future, sometimes you don't know how the future is going to look like. So how do you build the infrastructure in a way that it will support continuous changes of your business? How do you have the flexibility that you need? How do you build the right infrastructure that will allow you to change continuously, even if you don't know how it's going to look like? Because when you choose an ERP, when you choose technology, when you choose your AI infrastructure, you don't know where you're going to be in 3 years. You definitely don't know where you're going to be in 5 or 7 years. How do you select the right tools that will allow you flexibility to adjust to your future needs and to your future business needs, that will allow you not that you will not have to change technology every 3 years because your system has changed. Sorry, because your business has changed, you're going to need to change your system as well.
Right. That's a great point. That's well said. I think looking at where you could be and really rethinking the possibilities of where you could take your business with technology, but then you sort of have to back up and back into incrementally what are the steps we need to take to get there. And that's obviously the $1 million question that needs to be answered as part of your digital strategy and roadmap going forward. So, well, I
Yeah.
appreciate this conversation. This is really good stuff. And we were kidding before we went live here today that we could probably talk about this for 3 to 4 hours, and time would fly by,
Easily.
and it certainly did. So we'd love to have you back for a follow up. This would be a great topic to keep diving into. But in the meantime, how do people learn more about you and connect with you and Priority Software?
So through our website, we're launching a new website with a lot of materials about ERP as a whole, about retail, about hospitality, about different verticals of the ERP. So this is really coming up in the next 3 weeks. But still, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to answer any question you have. We have and there we have webinars. We have a lot of materials recorded and things that are coming up. So connect to us through LinkedIn. Follow Priority Software on LinkedIn, and we'll be happy to have you in our community.
Great. Well, thank you for being part of our community here today and part of this digital transformation community here. Sagiv, really appreciate having you on the show today. So
Thank you. It
uh,
was fun. Thanks for having me.
absolutely, this was a lot of fun, and thank you to the audience for the great questions too. I really appreciate it. Be sure to tag someone who you think might be interested in this conversation. Tag them in the chat and engage them as well. Hopefully, they'll get some value out of this conversation. As I mentioned at the start of the discussion, this interview will get edited and polished and combined with other content to become part of our weekly Transformation Ground Control podcast. The episode featuring this interview will be released a week from tomorrow, so a week from Wednesday of next week. You'll see that episode. Check out Transformation Ground Control on YouTube. It streams every week to LinkedIn as well as Facebook, and it also goes to all the audio podcast platforms too. So Google, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, etc. Wherever you listen to podcasts, be sure to check it out. Again, it's called Transformation Ground Control. Again, my name is Eric Kimberling. We do these live streams as part of that podcast every Tuesday, same time, same place. So be sure to check us out every week on different digital transformation topics. Thank you again, Sagiv, for being here from Priority Software, and thank you to the audience. Hope you all have a great week, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.